So I guess my first question is, how would you describe the problem today, right? Because you have multiple sides who try to perhaps argue it's a religious problem or an economic problem or a political problem. So how would you describe the problem in its current manifestation?
Well, in the current manifestation, I think it has multiple faces right now. Uh, there have been attempts to make it a religious one, while as initially, right from all these 70 years, people felt that there is something unresolved, and being a political in nature, this should have been resolved politically, which unfortunately hasn't happened. But the last 30 years has made the whole situation from bad to worse. Ever since gun has come into Kashmir, I mean, nobody in its wildest dreams would have imagined that a fun-loving Kashmiri would take up a weapon and say that enough is enough. I need answers. And even though national conference doesn't support the armed struggle or any kind of violence, but then a overwhelming majority of people of Jammu and Kashmir became a part of the armed struggle. But coming back to 2019, this issue will remain unless and until there's not a beginning from New Delhi, a reapproachment, a kind of a dialogue process with both the state and the I mean, let's put it like this one. Jammu and Kashmir has two problems. One is internal and one is external. Now, unless and until they don't sit on the table and sit with Pakistan and discuss all the pending issues, the larger issue won't be resolved. But having that been said, what is really important right now is that New Delhi has to ensure that issues of Jammu and Kashmir, what I call the internal issues, have to be resolved. Unfortunately, when the new government 5 years back came into being in Delhi, we expected a lot of out-of-box solutions from that government, because it was after a long time that there was a very strong mandate, and a mandate to a party like BJP, because if Congress would have done anything with regard to Kashmir, the BJP would have been shouting from the rooftop that this is wrong. But because BJP got that mandate, so we expected them to take out, I mean, or look at Kashmir issue in a total different way. I mean, initially when Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, there was some different which people really did not expect. For example, calling the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, to Delhi for his swearing in. Then flying from India to Pakistan and attending his daughter's wedding. These were some of the issues, some of the things that people of this country, and especially people of Jammu and Kashmir, thought that this would never happen in their lifetimes, because that was the hostility between the two countries. But then that started, it was a good beginning. Unfortunately, that out-of-box solution we didn't see with regard to Kashmir. There was no will to somehow get leave the separatist apart. Even the mainstream political parties were not brought to the table and said, what is your problem and how we can resolve it. Unfortunately, after 2016, when that major agitation uprising started, where close to around 80-90 people got killed, even then there was no will from Government of India to start a dialogue process, neither with the mainstream nor with the separatists. Unfortunately, whenever there is an issue and it remains unresolved, it keeps on reoccurring. So that's what precisely happened in 2016. That after that was kind of, let's say, there was a lid put on that issue. There was not actually resolution of that problem, that why did 2016 happen. There was no interlocutors except for one person who was nominated by Delhi, saying even before his nomination there were three statements from Government of India, one from the Prime Minister's office, one from the Home Minister's office, and one from the BJP's headquarters. Now all the three were totally contradicting each other. One was saying that he is a spokesperson. The other was saying that he doesn't have a mandate to talk about the resolution of Kashmir. The third was saying that he is just as an interlocutor. So even before him landing in Kashmir, they put a lot of confusion in the minds of people of Jammu and Kashmir that when he came to Kashmir, there was hardly anyone ready to talk to him. So this is where I come to the earlier point that New Delhi has to be very serious while dealing with Jammu and Kashmir. You just cannot play. This approach that let's deal with it has to go off. You can't deal with a problem. You can deal with a law and order problem, but you can't deal with a problem which is political in nature. So unfortunately, he was turned down. He was, at the end of the day, he became just another bureaucrat talking about electricity, roads, and public health engineering. That was his major role. So what my more important point that I want to make here is that unless and until New Delhi doesn't agree or doesn't understand that Jammu and Kashmir is a political problem and then looks at it politically, this iron fist approach or any other approach will never succeed.
So you talked a lot about a dialogue, right? But I guess there's perhaps a different use of terminology, right? Because to you, the dialogue should include all parties. That includes separatists and the militants, right? But to New Delhi, right, there's a large, and I think this is where word choice becomes very important, is because they're referred to as terrorists, right? So does that delegitimize the conflict and their perspective, and in doing so enrages them more? Because if you're going to incur in this dialogue, to New Delhi, if they bring the terrorists to the table, they're legitimizing them. So is that word choice of terrorist, right? Sort of playing down the actual part of this conflict or the reality of this political conflict is?
No, I agree with what you're saying and I get the point that you're making. But what I'm precisely saying is that you cannot hide from a problem. You may call a terrorist a militant and a militant a terrorist is one part of it. But one needs to understand that Kashmir is a problem. Fair enough, this is not the time to talk to terrorists. National Conference or our party has never said talk to terrorists. But we are saying that if there is an unresolved issue, you need to start a dialogue process. Unless and until, why does a militant become a militant? You need to go to the base of that. In 2014, when we were in the government, that was one of the best elections that happened in 2014, where we lost. But the majority of people came out and voted. Well, that is their decision who they voted for. There were multiple reasons why didn't they vote for us. But the fact is that they voted for a change. The militancy was at its lowest ebb. And suddenly after the government, just in 1 year, the militancy shot up to 500%. Why? That is what precisely our question is. That means that there was total mishandling of Kashmir. For example, even then we had, if you remember, there was this one militant leader known as Burhan Wani. He was killed. And that is how it started. Instead of killing him, he should have been arrested. The point is that you arrest and then make sure that he converts, he comes back to the mainstream. You are just making a martyr after him, and that's what precisely they did. What I am saying that after 2014, when the BDP and the BJP came together, a lot of people in Jammu and Kashmir had a lot of hope that now that Prime Minister Modi is in the center, there is a new government in the state, there will be some sort of dialogue process. Now, I never said, or we never said that talk to militants or terrorists or anyone, whatever the terminology you want to use. But what we said that there should be a dialogue process with Pakistan and the stakeholders of Jammu and Kashmir. That includes even the Hurriyat. There is nothing wrong in talking to each other, because that is how you resolve issues. Unfortunately, the government in Delhi, time and again, thought that if they start a dialogue process, their whole image of being very hard on extremism or separatism will be taken otherwise in the rest of the country. But that is what I'm again coming to the point, that Jammu and Kashmir needs to be dealt differently. It should not be dealt considering or keeping in mind electoral prospects in the rest of the country. It has to be totally different. There is an issue unresolved. You have had 30 years. Tell me anywhere in the world where this struggle has gone as long as it has for Jammu and Kashmir. So that means people are still angry. This is just, it's simmering. Today or tomorrow they'll again come out and protest. Don't take this silence or this peace as you have won everything and everything is normal. You can't hold an election right now. You could not hold an election for the Parliament of Anantnag seat, which was held by the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. You couldn't hold an election because of the situation, and that situation has turned from bad to worse because of the mishandling. So everything is interrelated here.
So I guess another question I have is that you talked a lot about in your last response, you referred to this idea that J&K is not another state, right? You can't treat it the same way. But do you perhaps is that perhaps a hard message or a hard way to treat the problem when, from India's perspective, as a secular country, their belief is that regardless of your religion, you should be able to coexist the same way every other state does. So why in that case should J&K be given special privilege in that sense?
All right, now Jammu and Kashmir itself was called a mini India with different religions in it, different cultures being practiced here. It was a mosaic of a lot of religion here together. Now, if you see overall, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been very secular. Whether it's religious-wise, whether if you move around Kashmir Valley, you'll see a lot of shrines here. There are no that fundamentalist sort of thinking in Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of shrines. Sufism is practiced to a large extent in Jammu and Kashmir. Now that's one part. We never say that, when we say that treat Jammu and Kashmir separately, there is a reason to it. If you go back in the past, when Jammu and Kashmir acceded to the rest of the country, it acceded on certain conditions. It was the only state only princely state in the country that acceded and negotiated its terms of accession. While as Junagadh, Hyderabad and other states eventually merged into the country, we did not. We acceded on certain conditions, and that we were told that these are the things. Let's say foreign affairs, currency and defense will remain with the union. The rest we will deal with ourselves. Now, until and unless those promises were made and respected, everything was okay. As soon as those promises were started, as soon as they started breaking all those promises, the issues started. People started asking that, look here, we had an option to go to Pakistan, we had an option to remain independent. We did not. We chose India because we knew that this is a secular country. We would like to stay with this country because we thought our future is secure here. And you promised us in return that you will respect all those terms and conditions that we acceded on. Unfortunately, all these years, all the laws extended to Jammu and Kashmir, apart from all these three things that I mentioned, are illegal because you cannot. They used proxies in Jammu and Kashmir and furthered their agenda and weakened the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the only state which has its own constitution, which has its own flag. Doesn't this say that this is a separate state, but within the Union of India? We have our own constitution, and Article 1 of that constitution binds us with the rest of the country. So these are some of the things that have been done with an intention that we are a part of India. There is no doubt about it. We are a part of India, but we acceded because of our different way of living, or different, let's say, different ways of living. We acceded to India, but we said these are the conditions that we want to stay with it.
So I guess going off that, right? So talking to some people in BJP, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
right, or the national parties in general, they'll argue that to return to such autonomy, which is in the manifesto of the NC, pre-1950 levels, is a reverse of any progress that is made towards the integration of Kashmir in India. How would you respond to that?
Why go so crude on this? Why become so? I'll again come to that point. Yes, we can discuss on merits and demerits. We can discuss on what is in the benefit, what is beneficial for Jammu and Kashmir, right from 53 till now. That can remain with us, but that is a debatable thing. But I'm again asking you the same question. I decide to be with you. I choose when I have different options. I choose to be with the rest of the country. But I said I will be with you, but I have certain conditions. And you respected those conditions. Why would you after 70 years say, look here, I don't respect your condition. You can go to hell. I just want you with or without your consent. That is not how it happens. I mean, I love my country. There is no doubt about it. But why are you pushing me to the wall by saying that, look here, was my decision 70 years back wrong? Would I have been better with Pakistan, or would I have been better with independence? There are voices that are on the road now. People are saying, very intelligent people who love this country, but they are saying, why are we being pushed to the wall? Is it wrong that we decided to be with the Union of India? So these are some of the things that people have started asking questions. Unfortunately, BJP is playing its politics just to get benefit out of it from the rest of the country.
Okay. So I guess moving on to sort of the modern day, we touched a bit about why the problem is continuing, but I want to talk a bit about the micro level, right? So I've visited some local universities, and like talking to young people, a lot of them say that they don't want to vote, or they refuse to vote because they feel the system has been imposed on them. So in that sense, how would you convince those people, or what are the steps necessary to bring those people back into the democracy in place?
It is a Herculean task to get all those youngsters back to the mainstream, because these 30 years our educational system has really gone bad. Everything that we were proud about has somehow or other been damaged by the happenings in Jammu and Kashmir. I can't convince a youngster from a place like Pulwama to vote for me or to vote for a democracy where his neighbor has been killed who was an innocent. So it becomes very difficult for us to explain it. But there is still hope. When I say there is still hope, I know that if New Delhi stops meddling with the internal affairs, internal politics of Jammu and Kashmir, I will be able to convince that youngster that you are better with this country. You are better with being in the mainstream than being radicalized and being a part of separatism, or thinking in terms of taking up arms. Unfortunately, as and when I do this, there are problems being created by Delhi. I mean, time and again, like I said, there is a concerted effort by some powers that may be in Delhi to somehow ensure that the mainstream political parties are totally delegitimized, in the sense that they want to create an impression that the whole whatever is happening in Jammu and Kashmir is because of the mainstream political parties. Now, and then creating proxies here. This last election, New Delhi again created a lot of proxies here. It's not needed. You don't need a proxy. Why would you need that? To somehow weaken the mainstream political party. You had a panchayat election. You got a lot of members. You put them in police stations, in secured building. Some people who can't even go in their panchayat wards were elected unopposed. Why on the earth would you do such a thing to a place which is suffering from militancy or suffering from all this destruction from the last 30 years? So again, I come to the point that it is our obligation the local politicians, the mainstream, to ensure that youngsters, youth comes back to mainstream and becomes a part of mainstream. But unless and until you don't let us do it, you need to leave us alone to do all this instead of meddling with our internal politics, and that's what we have been emphasizing on that. I mean, another point. How do I convince a youngster when he will, on the other hand, ask me a question that you want me to be a part of the system, when the same system wants to snatch my identity from me? When New Delhi wants to create a problem here by abrogating Article 370 and 35A. If the 35A goes or the Article 370 goes, I lose my identity. So why shouldn't I take up a weapon or a stone and throw it on towards the system? So that is the question. We are saying don't meddle. When I say don't meddle, I say don't go towards 35A or 370. That has been decided. I know, and the people of Jammu and Kashmir know, that we are legally protected. There are three dimensions: the legal, the political, and the moral. Legally, we are fine. Politically, if you give us the chance, people will come out. But there is something called as the moral thing also, which morally you have no right to encroach about the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, and that's what we've been telling time and again to the powers that may be in Delhi.
However, to that extent, right? So the moral encroachment starts sort of after Abdullah's house arrest, right? Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
So to that extent, I mean, historically speaking, again, I would like to get National Conference did work with Congress during that period, right? So wasn't it sort of a hand-in-hand affair where there was that encroachment, where not the current politicians of the National Conference, but in the 50s and 60s, surely that there was
70s.
And even in 70s, that there was a union between the two that allowed for the encroachment, which did stop when Abdullah comes back, but started again after he passed away.
I know, because Congress did a lot of damage. When I blame BJP right now, I must also admit that Congress is the sole responsible for all the damage that has been done to Jammu and Kashmir. Like, when I say New Delhi, it's the successive governments there.
So should the Congress be the party or group that's
Of
held
course.
the most responsible for the insurgency?
Yes. They created people like Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad, GM Sadiq, GM Shah, Sadiq Saab, Mir Qasim. All those, they were proxies of Delhi. All Congress people. And all those 20 years, these people were... our leadership was arrested. They were arrested. Who is it? That's right. So our leadership was arrested in 53, put behind bars. And all those 20 years, all the people who were elected ensured that there is, the constitution is weakened. The special status of Jammu and Kashmir is weakened. But having that been said, in 75, which a lot of people blame us for, that we went with Congress and formed the government and Sheikh Abdullah became. The most important thing that people don't understand and they miss out is that when Sheikh Abdullah took over as the chief minister, there was a letter written to Indira Gandhi that because for the people, I will take this assignment, but only on one condition, is that whatever laws have been illegally implemented towards Jammu and Kashmir have to be reversed, and we have to go back to 53. That means because for the people, he did agree that time, because Kashmir was at a threshold that time. He wanted to take, but he made sure to tell the then Prime Minister of India that I take this seat with half-heartedness, but on one condition, that you will respect whatever conditions that were in 53.
So just to clarify, while Congress was manipulating state politics, the National Conference to some extent did allow it to happen because
we were not in the power.
No, but in the 60s and 70s...
We were nowhere there.
Right, but that you did put up proxies that were...
No, we were not there. Congress, it was the Prime Minister, it was a Congress Prime Minister, Congress Chief Minister. So 56 onwards or 53 onwards, it was all Congress.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying time and again. Then when we took over from 75, then we made things better. But again, a lot of damage was done by then.
So then would the 87 election, however, be a bit different? Because in that sense, there wasn't, at least to many, considered a free election, and that was a union.
Everybody is talking about 87. Why isn't anybody investigating that? Just because a few booths were captured doesn't mean the whole election was rigged. Just because somebody doesn't win, that doesn't mean that the election was rigged. If it was rigged, there are so many institutions, so many ways to find out. But just to legitimize their statement and make sure that their statement is taken well, and to somehow belittle that election and to blame us for that. Everybody is saying 87 was rigged. If it was rigged, there was successive government after us. There was a Congress government. There was a PDP government. There was a BJP government. Why didn't they investigate 87? So that is like everybody wants to say whatever he feels like saying. Doesn't mean that that is correct.
Okay. So going back a bit to the past, right, is that a lot of historians, at least in Delhi, try to assert, and this is perhaps, I think, to your point about trying to make it sound like a religious conflict rather than political. So to what extent perhaps could one blame Dogra rule for setting the seeds of discontent? Because you've said in the past that there was bias given towards the pundits in the region. So to what extent can that rule be held responsible for the manifestation of insurgency, for sowing the seeds of discontent much earlier?
I think that phase was different to what it is right now. Even after, if you talk about Martyrs' Day, which is on 13th, that was one part of the history of Jammu and Kashmir. But after that, the Dogras and the Kashmiris have really lived happily after that. It's not that if that was the case, then National Conference would never have won close to around 15-20 seats from Jammu region. Out of that, close to around 5 to 10 from the plains, which is predominantly a Hindu belt. We wouldn't have won from there. The fact is that National Conference again ensured that whatever differences there were between different religious communities or between Kashmir and Jammu are somehow addressed, and they are brought together. We were very successful in doing so. We had Karan Singh in our party. He was the Maharaja. His son Ajat Shatru was a minister under Dr. Farooq Abdullah. So if you're talking about National Conference, we have been all along making it sure that Dogras, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and that is why one of our most popular slogan, that Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Ittihad. This has been one of our most popular slogan, that we all have to assimilate together, we all have to be together to take Jammu and Kashmir forward. But unfortunately, over these years, it has been totally communalized. Whatever improvements we made all these years have been really, I don't know, to get the right word, have been totally, that fabric has been destroyed. And I blame the leadership of Jammu, the Hindu leadership or the BJP leadership there. They have made sure that somehow or the other that fabric is broken or damaged.
So on the point of the divide between Jammu and Kashmir, looking at it from like a micro level, is there a separation in the way the national government treats the people of Jammu versus Kashmir? Right? Is there more perhaps check-in by police and there's more harassment towards the Kashmiri people, or perhaps is there more funds that are being given to that place that should be perhaps going to Kashmir instead?
Well, I mean, they justify doing whatever they want to do in Kashmir by saying that this is a disturbed area and relatively Jammu is free. Now, I don't want to go into specifics in terms of funding to Jammu and Kashmir. If you see for yourself that Jammu is much more developed than Kashmir right now. And
is that purposeful for politicians to perhaps benefit from the Hindu voting bank, or is that more due to the fact that development is harder in an area where it's perceived, may not be reality, as extreme violence?
I think it would be more of because of the militancy in Kashmir, that benefit went to Jammu. all that fun.
Does the government have a handle, perhaps? And
I don't know.
keeping
It's
Kashmir
very
down?
obvious if you have a law and order situation in one place, and there is a relatively peaceful area. Obviously, it will be any government would do the same thing. But that's one part of this story. But the second part is that even though Jammu got a good share of development, unfortunately, the communal groups, the fringe element, or leadership of Jammu made sure that they get this into the people's mind that Jammu has been somehow or the other discriminated.
Okay, so sort of getting to my last two questions is they're kind of one as well. So I think what steps are necessary to sort of solve this problem, and why is it that you believe, as being a part of national conference, that the national conference and Omar Abdullah should be the people to solve it?
One, New Delhi should stop meddling into the affairs of Kashmir politics. Yes, everybody has a right to contest election, propagate their agendas. But if that agenda creates a divide between religious groups, between religious community, if it divides Jammu and Kashmir, then I think that would be the biggest disservice they would do to the state. Two, they need to ensure that the mainstream political parties are made to grow instead of somehow or the other creating problems for them. Three, very important is that they should not see Jammu and Kashmir as a law and order problem or a military or there should be a military approach towards Kashmir. They need to understand it's a political problem, and they need to ensure that there is somewhere a little process of political setup, a dialogue process started with the mainstream. It doesn't take a lot to get the mainstream on one table and talk to them and say, look here, we want to resolve this Kashmir issue. Let's talk about autonomy. Because autonomy, our document, when I say our, it's because National Conference had passed it, but it's the only document that has a stamp of 2/3 majority of the state legislature. It is within the Constitution of India. If I was somebody in Delhi and telling the powers that, maybe I would say, give autonomy to Jammu and Kashmir, give them more powers, let them concentrate on the development part of Kashmir instead of talking about political. That way people will say that they've won something. They got what they deserved. And that is how the process of reconciliation will start. That is how the process of people thinking that they won and their sacrifice has not gone haywire. That's one part of it. Two, because Mr. Abdullah is a very straightforward man. He would say anything that is in the interest of both Jammu and Kashmir and the country. He would never talk separatism. He would never talk about the accession is wrong. He will not talk about taking Jammu and Kashmir out of India. He will never talk about anything that is not in the national interest. So a person who agrees to the accession to India, a person who's been the chief minister of the state, a person who wants to bridge the divide between Jammu and Kashmir, he wants to bridge the divide between Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the country, needs to be empowered and not somehow create problems for him instead of, you need to ensure that the clean politics in Jammu and Kashmir wins instead of the petty politics that is being played right now. In that case, I think Mr. Abdullah would be the right person, and the parliament election showed that people have reposed their faith in the party and him. I hope that in the assembly polls, people repose their faith in the length and breadth of this state, whether it is Ladakh Leh, whether it is Jammu, Pir Panjal, Chenab Valley, or the whole Kashmir Valley. The people need to stand up and support this man so that somehow or the other, the problems that are faced by people of this state are resolved somehow.